Okay, everyone, thanks for coming along. My name's Mike Wheeler. I'm the chair of the Department for Works and Pensions Group, Young Members Advisory Committee of the Public and Commercial Services Union.
Now, the Conservative Party at the general election came up with a balance of 80% cuts to 20% tax rises. The Labour Party looks slightly different. But let's not forget here that the Labour Party also pledged £44 billion worth of cuts at the general election.
The deficit has not been caused by excessive public spending. It has not been caused by building too many schools, too many hospitals, employing too many public sector workers to provide essential public services. The cause of the deficit is not high public spending.
The deficit is not in the main the cause of the cuts, but an excuse for them. That this is a Tory government that's using that to make the cuts that ideologically they've always wanted to make anyway. They want the private sector in to deliver public services. They want people to have to pay for them and private companies to be able to make a profit out of them.
The government alleges that the previous government got the United Kingdom into serious financial trouble, and the best and only remedy is to implement these drastic and far-reaching cuts. I personally and the Green Party would argue they're wrong on both accounts. Firstly, we're not really in a historically high level of debt. I mean, debt at the moment is 70% of GDP.
And isn't it an irony, however, that just 2 years ago, the big debate in society was not about the so-called unaffordability of public spending, but the economic crisis brought about by the greed, the incompetence of the banks, to whom we've just handed over £1.3 trillion.
And yes, partly was down to the fact that we had to bail out the banks. That was inevitable, and I'm sure you know, in terms of all three parties, main parties, supported that at the time.
Well, actually, the government's been able to afford a cut in corporation tax at the last budget, cutting the amount of money paid by the biggest companies.
Senior Vice President of the National Union of Teachers. My union is completely opposed to the privatisation of education. We were opposed to the new Labour Development of Academies programme, and we're even more opposed to the Tom proposals for academies and free schools. What I'd like the panel to tell me is what exactly is the difference between the new Labour programme of privatisation of education and what the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats are now proposing?
To give you an honest answer, there is nothing. I mean, actually, what we're looking at in terms of the Conservatives is, I guess, turbocharging Labour's academies programme.
The free school proposal is an entirely new proposal, which basically means the coalition's decided that they will top slice money going to existing schools in order, whenever some parents or individuals pop up and say, well, we'd like to open a new school, in order that they can be given the money to do it. I guess this is partly based on the notion of greater choice, which of course means we're going to have lots of surplus places all over the place.
If you're going to put £20 million into a school, well, that's going to have an effect. It's obvious. That is not rocket science. But why does that extra money, if it's available, and the vast majority of it comes from taxpayers' money, why does that have to come with the strings attached? Why does that school have to come out of local authority control? Why do local people not get the democratic say in the running of their school? And that, to me, jars incredibly with what Chris was saying earlier about the Tories wanting local people to have more responsibility over running their things. Or do they only mean local people who have enough money to be able to sponsor an academy or set up a free school?
The burden of the destruction of services will fall mainly on young people and disproportionately on women and on those communities, our communities, which will be, many of which will be pushed and marginalised further into impoverishment. We will see, as we talk about 25 and 40% cuts as the government is, the destruction of the welfare state as we've understood it since the Second World War. And all of this has been done on the basis of, if you like, a shock and awe type campaign. by the politicians and in the media in order to give the impression there is no alternative to the cuts.
I mean, the government, the coalition, tried to pretend after the budget, it was extraordinary, to pretend that these were fair cuts. I mean, every commentator, the Institute of Fiscal Studies, all of them pointed out that the people that get hit the most on the coalition's proposals in that first budget were those on the lowest incomes. There were cuts in disability benefits, cuts in housing benefit, cuts in child benefit, cuts in tax benefit. And that's before they get to hacking away at public services.
What the government is doing is punishing not the perpetrators of this crisis, but its victims. Already, people, ordinary working class people, the length and breadth of this country, are suffering from this crisis. There are 1 million young people unemployed, out of work, education or training, and the cuts will only serve to make this much, much worse.
Hi, Kevin Beezer, South West Regional Secretary of the Communication Workers Union and also a constituent of the Kingswood constituency. And the question to the panel is, how does the government, so it's really aimed at you, Chris, intend to keep the universal service obligation, given the geography of the South West, in its current form?
If we don't tackle some of the issues that are going on now, we'll see a 25% reduction in service.
Well, one of the reasons they got the problem is this black hole, so-called, in their pension fund. And the reason they got that is the company took a contributions holiday for a long time, i.e. they didn't pay in the money that they were supposed to. If I decided I was going to take a council tax holiday and not pay in the money I was supposed to, I would find myself up before the magistrates.
To maintain the universal service obligation other than maintaining Royal Mail within the public sector would be a very expensive, inefficient way of doing it. And that's one of the many reasons that I opposed the part privatisation suggested by the previous government.
In terms of days lost by industrial action in this country, the Royal Mail makes up 60% of those.
But I think actually that's something that CWU members should be proud of. Because when Chris is talking about growing up and being sensible, what he's actually meaning is you should shut up and take a kick in. And I don't think
Will they prioritise the collection of that 120 billion over cuts in welfare, public sector pensions and the civil service compensation scheme, attempting to cut our redundancy money, all of which added together, all of those three things added together, equal less than 1/6 of the total tax deficit. So I'm not great at maths, but to me that's a logical way of resolving the deficit. What do the panel think?
Looking at the tax evasion, it doesn't necessarily make sense to be cutting a department that may be able to bring you in that extra revenue. And that's just a sort of common sense issue that I think sort of certainly needs to be looked at. I'm more than happy to be taking that back and arguing that case in Parliament.
It surely can't be right that a millionaire banker is actually paying less proportionately in tax than the woman, and it usually is a woman who is cleaning his flat.
The government has made some moves towards looking at tax evasion, something that hadn't happened previously, that now is a start.
I think there's a reason why this government and this cabinet won't be voting for increasing taxes on millionaires. And it's a very simple reason. Most of them are millionaires. A lot of them are multi-millionaires. And I don't think we'll see this particular bunch of turkeys voting for Christmas.
We believe that public spending is not a debt, it's an investment. It's the public services that give the basis and provide the basis of a civilised society. And if you attack that, you'll bring us back to the barbarism of past ages where people had no cover in terms of when they fell into problems.